Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode on Masters of Product Podcast. Our topic for today is how AI is changing the sales process, especially in a high growth SaaS company. And to help us do that, in our studio today, we have Matt Waxman. Matt is the Chief Product Officer at Precisely. He has been leading product teams and product strategy for, I don't know, God, 20, 25 years at companies like Dell, Puppet, Cohesive, Veritas, and before this were Arctera, where we met. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. We help chief product officers build AI native product teams. Listen, most product teams are using AI. Very few are actually getting the impact and the ROI. That's the gap we bridge. If you want to learn more about us, please check us out at echo-point.com. Matt, welcome to the show. It's good to have you back the second time. We must have done something right for you to say yes the second time around.
I was just looking back. I think the last time I was on was almost a year ago. And I was thinking, wow, there has been so much change in that
100%.
period of time. It's wild.
100%. I mean, I think where we started off with and where we are today is like a night and day difference. Yeah. And then if you extrapolate it to what's going to happen a year from now, right? It was almost weird because we had the conversation, and then I thought, okay, things are finally slowing down. And then came the harness tools like Claude Code and Codex. And then that just was a step change in the way product teams work.
Yeah, completely. Completely. Yeah, if you had asked me about this topic a year ago, I don't think I'd have any opinion on it. And now it's like, wow, there's a lot to talk about.
But that is the foundation of our conversation today. So, the way we're building products, the way teams are moving, and with the way how AI is impacting the day-to-day work, it's not just impacting the product people, which we know and love, but it's also impacting the whole go-to-market process, right? And I know you wrote an article about it recently, which is the genesis of our conversation. Tell me more about your point of view about what you're seeing changing.
Yeah, you mentioned I've been doing this 20, 25 years.
And or maybe it's 25, 30 years. I may have got the numbers wrong.
It's a long time. I had a lot more hair when I started in this space.
Me too.
Yeah, comes with the territory.
Comes with the territory.
One of the things that I think has been a constant throughout that time is most businesses are capacity constrained. And so whether that's building product and being constrained on how many people you have to write code or build requirements or so forth, or if you're a sales team and how many people you can have feet on the street, you're capacity constrained. And we live in this very interesting time now where thanks to AI, you can start to relieve a lot of the bottlenecks that have existed. And I sort of think of this simplistically, like we've always been in this funnel mode, right? Knowing that we have this very precious capacity that we have to optimize, whether it's your development team or your sales team, it almost flattens that out and makes it into a pipe, right? Like the input speed and throughput can be the same or very close 100%. To the output of it. Yeah. That's very different than it's ever been before.
No. Yeah. And so you're absolutely right. The amount of stuff that you can push through the pipe expands exponentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that has downstream impact on the go-to-market, on the sales process, even the ability of your users and customers to absorb that change.
Right.
Right.
And you and I were talking about this, we've had several conversations over the past few months about it. And I think what product people, we'll spend more time talking about this, but I think what product people do really well is that they're able to listen and diagnose a problem very quickly and start to think in a systematic way about how to solve for that. And when I think about that funnel to pipe, my mind instantly goes to, that's a problem that requires a rearchitecture.
Yeah. Oh, 100% agree. Because I think the way we do right now is just not going to work in the future. Right. But I'm curious, before we go into more details, your point of view has been shaped by a lot of the experience that you've had in the past. So if I remember correctly, you actually used to work in sales, or you had a stint in sales, if I'm not mistaken.
I did. I did spend some time in a sales organization on a sales leadership team. And for me, it was something that was very eye opening.
Mm,
I had spent my entire career in engineering and product, always worked with sales teams,
yeah.
obviously, but never lived within one to really understand what goes on. And it was a fantastic learning experience for
Oh, yeah.
me.
I agree.
It, I always tell people it is amazing how similar a sales process is to building a product. In product, we talk about a roadmap. In sales, you call it a forecast.
Yeah.
In product, we talk about a backlog. You have a pipeline.
Yeah.
In sales, in product, you talk about, are your features functional complete? In sales, you talk about it, did we get the technical win?
Yeah.
So it's actually very similar process oriented, just different terms in
Yeah.
there. And when I saw that and I learned that firsthand, for me, it really shifted my perception from sales is all about relationship. It is important, but it's also like some of the best enterprise sales teams have a process and they follow the process just like the best engineering teams
Yeah.
do to deliver great product.
I agree. And I think the similar, well, um, actually, before I share with you my story, tell me, when you were in sales, you saw a lot of similarities. What were some of the what were some of the challenges, as well as being a product person in sales? What did you notice at that moment in time?
I think the thing that for me was something I didn't appreciate as well was in product, you're so close to the problem that initiated why you were building X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And so you made that connection very quickly. It's rooted in your head. You can talk about the solution now any day of the week, any hour of the day. When you have, certainly at larger scale, a sales organization, the distance from the person who's on the feet on the street or your sales engineer to the product and engineering person who came up with the thing that you're going to
Yeah.
sell is very far apart.
100%.
And so, we sometimes toss around this word enablement, right? And like, it's just, we'll go do enablement, and we'll
Yeah.
get our sellers ready. There's so much more to
So
it
much more.
to
Yeah.
actually get people
Yeah.
to absorb and adapt and change. It is a
Yeah.
people challenge in the end. It's
Yeah.
a people business.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
so I don't think I had as good an appreciation of what that really takes, until I saw it and lived it.
Yeah. I actually think that it's always good for people in product to spend some time in sales, because it is an eye-opening experience. In fact, any profession you have, you should always, my philosophy is, and I tell my kids the same thing, I'm like, you need to do some time in sales, because you really understand truly what is it that the customers and clients want, and how your job is to take that, translate that into a solution that will work for them and work for a business. In many ways, it is very similar to product, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at customer viability and business viability.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
I think again on the parallels, we can easily sit inside the four walls of your company and say, we're going to change this workflow in our product, the user
yeah,
experience around this thing. And just makes a whole lot of sense to us, right? But that whole, how do you get customers through that transition, users through
yes,
that transition? It's the same challenge, right? Like
yeah,
you're sometimes very disconnected from your actual end
yeah,
user, and it's hard to
yeah,
affect change.
yeah. I agree. To the other topic that we're talking about just before this, is that in many ways, product will now, I have a feeling, that will have to be better at managing change as well, especially if the velocity of features and functionalities increase dramatically. How do you get the customers to start absorbing that change? Forget about preparing the sales team, of course, is a whole change management piece. But I think with speed comes all of these other things that you had the luxury of time before that you may not have had this time
Right.
around. So,
Right. Yeah.
um,
It is it's a fact of life in product, but there's still the human element of change that makes it
Yeah.
difficult for a lot of people.
Yes. And
And
that exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
that's the bridge we got to create.
Yes. Yeah. And I was actually talking to someone else, and they were most worried about what we touched on is like, Mustafa, if I push through all this change, I don't think some of my clients or customers are able to handle it. Right. And so now becomes, he's like, do I slow down? Do I, like, there's a whole bunch of different strategies out there. Do I continue with the same cadence? Do I just speed up a little bit? Do I go full for it? And I'm like, it really depends on how fast your customers are and how fast your competition is moving. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
There is I know we're straying a little bit off the
that's
sales
okay.
topic. We'll come back, but there is, I think now, well, you can generate so much more change that much faster. You can also more easily allow for unique experiences that your customers
Yes.
have so that you can take them through that journey, right? Because now it's so easy to spin up an experience that
Mm-hmm.
a new user is looking for, yet still
Yeah.
maintain the existing one for others. Whereas before, those were big tech stack migrations, customer moves, very disruptive. It's a lot easier to do that stuff these days.
Yeah. Are you guys experimenting with that with your product, in which you're building unique experiences based on customer segments?
We we're certainly experimenting more with it,
Yeah.
but we're also hearing feedback that is somewhat generational,
Mm.
meaning some generations, like up and coming generations early in career, just give me an MCP server and your favorite harness and let me do what I need to do. And
Yeah.
they're very comfortable with the blank screen around that. And other generations are, I want the orchestrated workflow in there.
Got
So
it.
that's why I think for a period of time, we're going to live side by side in these
Yeah.
worlds.
Well, that's an interesting one too, because I agree with you. I like the MCP too, because then once you connect it to your harness, you can pretty much do anything, right? And so you don't even need the traditional workflows that we worry about in SaaS,
Yeah.
right? It's more about how do I make sure my NCP is the most robust that I can get so they can do anything.
Yeah.
Um,
It's this super rare combination of, you can have both the most advanced user and the most novice user
yeah.
use that experience, because they could just ask a simple question as a newbie, or they could direct it to do things that are super sophisticated.
Yes. Yes.
And we haven't had that before, right? Generally, you needed to cater in
Yeah.
different ways.
It also makes a very different user experience, especially if they are touching your product through codecs or code, as opposed
Right.
to going and logging into the screen, right? And so
Right.
that whole experience becomes very different.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a fascinating topic because I think it
Sounds
does.
like another podcast in the making.
It
Another
is, and I agree. I think this is. I've heard other people experimenting with new user experiences, but I do think that we're going to get into the world in which there's going to be people who just want access to MCP, because then they can orchestrate everything on the back end, right? With skills and so on and so forth, they can connect different pieces, and for them, that's much more powerful. But I do think that product companies have to now figure out how do you supply those, because that segment's going to grow.
For sure.
Right.
Right.
There's a reason why, the connector companies, I forget what they're called. The companies that take one data to another data and so on and so forth. Right. They exist for a reason, because tools are kind of locked in. Now MCP does the whole thing.
Exactly.
Anyway,
yeah. Integrating different systems becomes that much more important.
Yes. Yes. Anyway, let's go back to our topic, and that's okay, because we like to take adventures in this podcast. Tell me, just because of all the changes we talked about, which is in many ways, a perfect segment, how do you think the go-to-market process or the sales process changes?
Yeah, so I mentioned before, when I see this transition from sort of a funnel to a pipe, it's really like a rearchitecture.
Yeah.
And that's why, you're talking to a product person about sales, and you would hear something very different, I think, if you talk to typically people within a sales organization. So I think about it this way, which is basically, if you're going to run your organization on AI, then you need to build the system that's going to power that.
Yeah.
And that system you can kind of think about as being your operating system.
Yeah.
And that operating system, just like you would, your computer operating system, has a data layer, right?
Yeah.
It has a context layer around it, and it has an application layer, if you will, or these days you'd call it agents in
Yeah.
there. And historically, if you looked at the sort of landscape of the tech stack for sales, it's pretty point solution oriented, or it's very CRM centric in the way that it's been built. It's not really data centric.
Right.
And so, like, that's why I start with that layer in the operating system, is because there's so much information that a typical salesperson needs in order to run an effective campaign. They need to understand the background of their customer. They need to understand the people who are in that organization. They need to understand what the dynamics are in that industry. They need to know which products they're using, whether they like them or not, on and on and on and on. And the more information they can get, the more effective their selling motion is going to be. So that's a data problem. And the problem is that this data has lived in many, many different systems. So when it comes to how do you use AI now, and if you're running on AI, you need to put that into some sort of brain, right? Like, people talk about your AI brain, your second brain. You need that for the context around your
100%.
your whole customer set. So I think that's really like a foundation. If you think about this operating system, that's a foundation.
Yeah.
Right? Then you start to put, the various sets of processes around that.
Yes.
So everyone has their sales methodology that they use. There's the MedPicks of the world and Medic and all these different things. Pick your favorite process. You need to have a process, and then you need something that's going to enforce it. Use that information that's in that data layer to actually inform the process. Start to automate things out of it, like an account plan, like an account brief, so on and so forth. And then the agents just sit on top of that.
Right.
And they're basically there to help get a sales team prepared for a customer call, help get technical team prepared on a configuration, help on the commercial side of putting a quote together. But now those things become trustworthy because they're built on all of those layers of data. And so I go back to, like, what was the constraint before? It's always been human capacity.
Yeah.
And so how do you make us all more effective? Well, you need to automate a bunch of that stuff. And so we can do that now.
100%. You talked about the operating layer. You talk about the process layer. Are there any other things that you think need to go in before you can start working this way?
I think obviously that's like the technical view of what do you need to build, right? Like, back to our earlier conversation, the human side of driving change in behaviors, adopting these types of new frameworks and so forth, can't be underestimated, right? Because I think everyone out there at this point is now, doing some level of prompting, I'll call it, right? But how many people are actually changing the way that they're thinking and their day-to-day workflow to actually embrace these things and think, I'm going to go to that agent first, or the agent's going to bring information to me. That takes a level of change that is very unique to teams and people and so forth.
And it's a mindset change. That's the biggest part. Right. The idea that I should be using AI first, or having AI do the first draft, or leverage AI to do X, Y, and Z. I think that's different. And then that also changes the level and expertise it needs to be working with AI, right? I think the best thing about AI and the worst thing about AI is that you ask it a question, it'll give you an answer.
Exactly.
But how you ask the question is so much more important to get anything that's functional and usable.
Yeah, we had a great conversation recently about creating account plans.
Mm,
And, like you said, you can very easily generate an account plan now.
yeah,
And on the surface, it will look
it looks
perfect.
great.
It
Yeah,
looks great. The problem, and this is also part of what I learned being in a sales organization, was how do you know if the person really understood what was in there?
yeah,
Right? So are you actually doing a disservice providing an agent, say, that can generate an account plan? Would it be better instead to still have the humans build their account plan, but have the agents test it,
yeah,
pressure test it?
yeah, 100%.
Right. So I think
I
it's that level of sophistication that goes beyond I can just generate stuff to how do I
yeah,
know I'm building good quality
I
things? Right.
actually think that what you just talked about is the true value of AI, to be honest with you. You know what? Yes, you can have AI generate a first draft and then you can tweak it or change it to what
Yeah.
you believe to be true. And I think most people stop there. But I actually think that that is only this. That's to me, in from value perspective, from getting most out of large language models. That's that's the least. The real thing is, say, how do I now, like you said, pressure test it or figure out what are the things that I'm missing? What are my blind spots? Right?
Yeah.
That takes an account plan or a PRD for that matter and makes it from good to great.
Right.
Right? And that does require, by the way, humans and thinking. And I think that's where we can excel. I think that's where most people don't use AI well.
Yeah.
I see very few people ever thinking it that way,
Yeah.
but that comes to a mindset.
Yeah.
Right?
I think if we compare and contrast, right? Um, Historically, you would have had an account rep build an account plan, and you'd rely on the sales manager to inspect that.
Yeah.
So now, if I could just generate an account plan, is the sales manager just inspecting whether you're using the tools to create that, and therefore you can check the box that says we're
Yeah.
using AI? Versus are they playing the adversarial role of
Hmm.
pressure testing it or ensuring that there's an agent that's going to go pressure test it? It's so easy, I think, for all of us to just fall into the trap of it's sort of like the easy way out to just
Yeah.
generate stuff and say, yep, we're using AI.
Yeah.
We're doing what we
Yeah.
needed to do.
Yeah. But it's the same thing. It's in my case, or in our conversation we've had before. That is the most shallow way of using AI, and it actually hurts your thinking because what you're doing is you're outsourcing your thinking to
Right. Right. Yeah.
AI, right? And it's gonna build the most generic account plan that you can ever think of, which falls apart once you start executing it, or it falls apart once it meets the reality of the client.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm these days I'm equally frustrated by the amount of AI generated stuff that I see, but also grateful that it's still so easily discernible.
Yeah,
I can instantly tell when someone sends me something that has been generated
yeah,
just by the tone and style, no matter how much you give it in terms of instructions.
yeah,
And it's a telltale to then up the pressure test of, do you really know what you're talking about? Like, is this
yeah,
really the plan you built? Can you
yeah,
defend it?
yeah,
There may come a point where that disappears and you can't tell, right? But for now, at least, I'm
yeah.
somewhat grateful for that.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't see. Doesn't matter how much context you give AI or how much you train it on your voice or data. It is still going to create what I call a highly, yes, maybe customized to your industry and to your company and to the problem, but it's still not the same as putting in the human thinking and pressure testing,
Right.
right? Because
Yep.
ultimately, what AI is doing is it's not really doing the thinking, no matter what the models tell you.
Yeah.
They are basically token generations, right? They
Yeah.
match the next word and they're pattern recognition machines.
Right.
Um, so I have a feeling that it's good. I actually think that AI gives us the opportunity to elevate our game,
Yeah. Very
right?
much.
And for me, the best people who use AI, the best PMs who use AI, are the ones who continue to use AI to become better thinkers in what we're doing,
Yeah.
um, and better problem solvers. And
Yeah.
so, you know, AI is one of the few places that you can say that, you know what, you're a customer who hates us. How
Mhm.
would you react to this? You can never ask those questions to a real customer, right? but you can ask that to AI to pressure test everything and anything. So,
Yeah.
um, tell me
The-
in the sorry,
no,
were you gonna um, given what you're laying out as what the future of go to market is, um, tell me where you guys are in the process. How have you, both the sales team and how product is helping the sales team incorporate these things?
Yeah. Well, I think it's that sort of last point you were making, last part of the sentence, that is really intriguing, right? Which is um, what I see more and more of is myself, colleagues I have in the industry, other product leaders are spending more time on topics like this, where
Yeah,
historically they didn't.
yeah,
And so we're having similar conversations within Precisely. And I'm fortunate enough to work with some great people who are very welcoming and open to having a product person contributing to how
yeah,
we think about our go-to-market strategy and our re-architecting and so forth.
yes,
So we're making good progress. We've built agents. The teams are using them on a regular basis. I think, like many companies, we are getting to the point where there's a question of scale, of
mm-hmm.
how do you start to scale some of these things up to larger groups of people and keep the governance around them there. But we're seeing good benefits. Like, for example, we call it the sales prep agent.
Yeah,
It's basically there to prepare an account brief, help a sales engineer get up to speed on what an offering could be, a configuration is. We have an agent that will actually build a demo for a customer, custom.
perfect,
So these
nice,
are all massive time savers, and we're seeing really
yeah,
good adoption of stuff like
yeah,
that because people instantly see the benefit to them as individuals, right? They spent time doing this stuff manually, right?
yeah,
So there's lots of great progress there. We're in the early stages of how do you build out that context layer? How do you build
yeah,
that data set and that brain and start to pull the data together
yeah,
across the organization? In fact, we're doing it in product
yeah,
as sort of the prototype of how we could do it across the company in the
yes.
go-to-market organization and so forth. Because again, like, product folks are a little bit more naturally inclined to think that way.
But they're better
And
system thinkers. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So we're starting to build, and it's very exciting, but it's still very early days,
it's
to
early
think
days.
about, like, we could
Yeah,
create a company brain.
yeah. I think it's amazing. I think creating company brain, like bringing the right context in so that everybody's working on the same context is a huge benefit to that one, right?
Yeah,
What does that look like? Because, well, you know this about context engineering. Too much, and you suffocate the model. Too little, and it's not enough to do that. So how do you maintain that balance?
yeah,
And then the other one that I've noticed with clients, I don't know if you've seen this, is maintaining that context is a whole different story
yeah,
because things change. And so you have to have almost a dedicated team, or at least dedicated time
yeah.
to manage it.
And and this is sort of what I was referring to as, like, scale is the challenge
Yeah.
because uh, quite frankly, the tools aren't there yet to really support great
No,
collaboration
no.
amongst teams. How do you share context between teams, as an example? When you're writing code, it's somewhat easy because the code is describing it, and you can have,
Yes.
lot MD files, and you can have those things.
Yes.
But when you're talking about company knowledge,
Yeah.
it's harder to share. And then
100%.
how do you control permissions on it? So it's a much
Yes.
more complicated set of problems.
We don't have the tools. I'm curious what you guys are experimenting with because, yeah. So first of all, native cloud code or Codex just doesn't have that, right? Um, I'm curious what you're using to actually have where you're hosting your shared context. Are you using GitHub
in
or?
in a GitHub repository.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we chose that for now. It has its pros and cons, but we chose that for now because it's versioned.
Yeah.
And it is something that we can share easily
Yeah.
amongst team members. We can do pull requests on it when there's a change. So there's some
Yes.
sort of change management
Yeah.
process around it. The
Yeah.
downside is I don't want people across the company learning how to use GitHub. That's not the right surface area for them. So, integrating that into a
Yeah.
tool workflow, is what we got to figure out to scale.
Well, do they need to go to GitHub? Because if their interface is only Claude code, you can build it in such a way that they never touch it.
You can.
Now, the
Yeah.
person maintaining it, they'll have to, of course, be well
Right.
risked.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've started to do those types of things. Like you can sort of mask a lot of it behind skill.
Yeah. Exactly.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we built a PM OS layer, and very early days, of course. And we had to put it in GitHub. This was about 3-4 months ago, just so that we can do version control, right? And so that anytime somebody uses the OS, the first skill it runs is to see if it's up to date.
Right. Exactly.
And then right.
Yeah.
But it's not great. It's very clunky.
It's not. And this is why I keep going back to like scale, because what happens in scale is you now have multiple product lines or different lines of business, however your organization is set up. They may want to build roadmaps slightly differently.
Yeah.
Because maybe you have a line of business that's more like an SMB business, and another one's enterprise. And so I'm using the extremes just to paint the picture, right? They may choose to prioritize differently.
Yes.
But you still want some consistency in how your roadmaps get created as a company. So, I'll go back to your skills and updating skills. So do you have a roadmap skill that's one, and you allow for deviation for that? But then how do you control that? You start to get in a lot of these sort of challenges of it becomes wild west quickly, right?
I agree. And I think these are not easy answers, right? You can have, I think it's more, first of all, it's a philosophical question. Like, do you want everybody to have the same roadmap? It makes it easier for us and CPOs because then everything's the same.
Right.
But are you strangling the business by doing that, right? Yeah. Or is it better to have multiple shades of OS layer, each just customized to that business or even to that team, but then managing things become harder and the context changes, right? So I don't think so there's an answer yet, and I don't think I've seen any tools yet come out. But that, I think, is the next unlock, because right now it's very much individual based.
Yeah. I think the kind of going back to the traps, if you will.
Yeah.
I think the trap right now is it feels like you can build that with the tools that we all have. It feels like I could go to Claude Code, hook it up to GitHub, and build that. And you can, but it's different to build something at scale. So I think we're going through that classical S-curve of adoption where, right, it's very exciting right now. You feel like you can build anything. And then we will come to a point where it's like, we need scalable enterprise grade tools and systems to do this stuff.
I agree. Let me ask you one last thing, and I know we always do this. We always get overtime. Just given where things are, and even with the last comment about scale, what has been the reaction from the sales team about this new approach? Because I can see people getting both, just like in product, being very excited, but also I can see people being a bit hesitant, right? What has been your experience as you've been working with your go-to-market team?
I think one of the roles of product leaders, CPOs, so forth, is to create a vision, to inspire people around it, to create some activation energy. And so what I see working well around that is doing that at a company level to show people, here are the things that we're looking at building on a PMOS. And you could do it for a go-to-market OS at the same time. We will help you to do that, based on our learnings. Don't be afraid of the tools. So I think a lot of our roles naturally is sort of being evangelists. You have to use inside your company as well to help get those teams engaged. And I've seen some great examples where there are people in our go-to-market organization who are building amazing tools now. And they're doing it completely on their own. And you would have thought that that was an engineer, right, a year ago that was building
Yeah.
that. And it's a sales rep, it's a sales ops person, and they're building just amazing stuff out there.
100%.
So, yeah.
Then that's great. I can't wait to see how things change a year from now.
I'm
Right?
sure we will check in again soon.
100%. Well, the good news is we talk often, so we'll know it. But yes, I do agree. There's another unlock happening in which people are going to figure out the unlock for individual productivity is there. Where's the unlock for team productivity or team speed or or for teams to just do better thinking, like the pressure testing that you're talking about. Matt, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming back to the show.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
Perfect. We will need to get you back a year from now.
Sounds great. Look forward to it.
Bye for now.